Silence, right? You hearing silence? That's because the crickets were no more in one place in the world. So-called activists respond to the SOS call on Facebook. May be the only time I'll ever know that Facebook could be used for something good. To shut down an armed raid on an organic farm out of Ontario, Canada. This is exactly the kind of thing I've been talking about. And if I heard correctly in my prep for my broadcast, I think Ron on UCY was talking about this, may be involved with these people, may know the the farmer here with the milkman, the cowman, that is involved with the resistance against commerce and the imposition of the do-gooders. Among the many examples of state power run amok is when armed law enforcers descend on small farms to carry out a war on food freedom. Last month, 20 officials with the Ministry of Agriculture, Natural Resources and Finance in Ontario, Canada, raided Michael Schmidt's milk farm with the help of local police. They began removing equipment and computers, intending to confiscate them for the crime of providing raw milk to people who freely choose to drink it. But then something awesome happened. Up to 50 members of Schmidt's Farming Collective showed up and blocked the path of the officials, risking arrest to demand that the government leave Schmidt's possessions and exit the property. And it worked. There was a complete standoff, Schmidt said. Finally, the farm share members negotiated a deal that everything stays here and they are leaving. In other words, the government left. So that's enough. That's a good enough preparation for this action. But I find it awful interesting, the mixed clues that come with this, that we now have to be a collective in order to assert private rights. We have to use the system, the legal system, against itself in the formation of a farm share agreement, where you, in this case, if I understand the news I heard about this, and to the limit of that, certainly have no inside knowledge, and didn't make a phone call, don't have that behind Woodshed. They not only had to go from buying shares in the cow, but I think the way I understand it, they had everybody actually buy shares in this farm. And I use that word farm in a quotes, I'll tell you, because most people don't understand it's like angling for fishing, like fishing for angling. These are terms of commerce. Farms are terms of commerce. And that's how they start the regulation authority. My first view on this is that there's no jurisdiction for the government against the use of the land that was granted to it. But I just found it fascinating that what it took to win was a collective to enforce the private rights. And that everybody has, that I understood, those that were there, had a share in the so-called farm for their own milk, which the gathering through Facebook, again, maybe the first time I've heard it being used for a good thing. I would ask maybe if they can do that off of Facebook, because that's controlled a lot. You may not be able to push your button and click a mouse to get one of these off in the future, these messages. 50 people show up to protect their own property, see? And this is where you see the power of property. This is where you see the power of people willing to come underneath that property. As something as simple as milk. But I would also suggest that these lands, as we say of them in the United States, the land, the disposal of the soil is for beneficial and productive uses, which are not commerce. And they're not within the regulatory authority. What they've done is they said that the product of the milk in commerce is regulable, because when it got into commerce, that went to the common weal, and that's where the police powers of the state steps up. And I've known this for a long, long time. It's part of the foot race, I tell you, that we've been trying to do here behind the woodshed to get people to understand this distinction. We have to be in the foot race, and we have to always understand where we are relative to the other runners. The other runners really aren't in the race. They just make it look like they are. And so we have to be running our track. And at every instance, we have to support our position with the assertion of that and the example that those trespassers are, as I've told you before, coming under color of authority. These are felons, actually. That, again, people coming together locally over locally produced food or anything else pertinent to land is going to be how this starts to work. I would have moved maybe beyond this. I understand in some of the videos they're very calm and they're very, very reasonable. Not that I'm unreasonable, but I think I would have been a little more assertive, at least in the aftermath, certainly, because they did walk away. Apparently they did get a few things. They did cut some They did get some computers and they got some milk, which they probably sampled for contamination, which is a scary thing as well. They can always sample it incorrectly. But then there's no actual chain of title, and there's no objective basis when it goes. They were supposed to actually give a sample to an inert party to do this as well. But I wanted to point out before we go back to crickets that this is the example, one example of how this works. This is not like the Bundy, where there's non-interested people with the property. This is people learning how to become the obstruction to the ignorance we call government. Not only do they have to become the collective in the socialistic sense, but then they have to take that into independent part and take responsibility to be there. And then they use the system, the legalisms against itself. And they know all that. And then they come back and assert it. And we see how now, this is an example of how people can start to do this. If Ron on UCY was involved, congratulations. This is really what I've been talking about. This is how you do it. This is what you do. You finally find out these people are criminals. When I finally, and years ago, when it finally occurred to me what we really were dealing with, and part of that was what I told you before. When I realized I'm not a criminal, I have no criminal intention. Doesn't mean I may not make a mistake and something may happen, but that's not an intentional, knowing and intentional crime. But when I'm not a criminal and someone in a costume comes and tells me I'm a criminal, then you know who the real criminal is. Especially when they're asking you for demanding of you things. And so when you get through that, when you finally realize that this reality of authorita is an illusion, you're able to stand up better. And I hope my contribution behind the Woodshed is to bring the principles of how we reapply what we've either never been told that we needed to know, we need to be diligent and vigilant to keep hold of, and or those things we know but maybe not apply quite so well. So kudos to it's probably not over. Again, these are not silver bullets. I think it starts to become over when you start putting, and we all have to start doing this. In fact, this came out in our miners meeting. I won't say too much more, except to say I told you all I was doing a broadcast in the end of April over the Sugar Pine mine, and I wanted to get on the record what the real deal was there. That's coming back, folks. And it's coming back to explain how it ought to have been done to a bunch of people who thought they were doing it right. And this is now getting an opportunity to make an education so many months later. That this is another object lesson on how it gets done more right if it's not a silver bullet. So there's a lot to say here. I found it interesting that we have to go to collective, Soviet communism. I guess it'd probably be better to assert an individual right, an independent right, and then back to property. That they're doing it fairly well here. To be able to talk down the officials and talk them out is a very big deal. That it took 50 to a handful, it shows that the problem's not really resolved. And my suggestion would be to look and see whether or not that invasion wasn't the felony theft by extortion under color on either the omission to recognize the right of the property and the production within the property as a pertinent to property, or as the omission to not recognize that was a property, non-commerce property right. Now we can set a monument there. Maybe we can get to the point where people don't have to do such sophisticated, I call them sophisticated. You look at the word sophist. It's not a good thing. Being sophisticated is not a good thing. But to create a sophistry of sorts in the creation of legalisms to defend an independent right and create the actionable property we aren't there yet to remove that one. We shouldn't have to do that either. That I just wanted to point out before we go to the common wheel reaction, that there's an example in the news, you'll get the link in the blogcaster, of what I've essentially been speaking about, of going local, getting together with people, meeting up with people of like mind, and don't let these costumes come against you without a nice, solid, unified resistance to defend your individual properties, the production that is so important to people, not in the status of legalisms, but in the status of men and women having, somewhat of an obligation to do that for themselves anyway, and show these people in costume that there is no place to go, and they had best leave, and they did it peacefully, is really a good example here. So that was the main thing I could see this week that was really a standout. And I think I caught that Ron on UCY was talking about it, maybe actually communicating with Michael Schmidt. I saw the videos. I think Michael Schmidt's got the right attitude. I would be a little bit more assertive on the criminal nature side. And I say that only because it's seeming, what we've been doing, that's seeming to be we're starting to see the real paying attention now when we put these officials into a felony status. And we don't do it like we more do it like, here, listen, here's a law that you are in felony status if you don't stop. And we give them that moment to think about it. And if they don't, then they're of knowledge. Not only do you have them for the fiduciary that they knew or should have known that, but that you have given them the fact that once they knew, even if they didn't know or should have known, that they were intending, that's criminal. Knowing and intending to harm you. And in a place the state has no authority. Now, Canada may be a little different because it's all to the Queen. It's all the property of the Queen. But if you have a right and an interest in the property, and there's no reservation against production, I would argue in those lands that there's the possible question of possession, that you argue that. Because we found out, at least in the United States, they've conglomerate, this sustainable development, international, what world we want, not what you and I want, what they want, has redefined what government is. And for the United States, when we really identified that production and land disposal was the fourth pillar for America, why it was different, and that they removed that and fraudulently mischaracterized it in commerce, which is regulable by the state, which I'm not going to talk more about. We haven't even got to the first step, that about arguing about certain types of commerce. And this thing I'm talking about for production is like timber, mining, it's farming, ranching, it's even manufacturing. That when we finally get this straightened out in our mind, what is protectable outside of the constraint and the regulation of government, we're going to really start doing something better. So my hat's off to what's happening, to throw the evidence that we have now that it's possible. I would advocate maybe going after these people a lot more stern with making a record that they had committed and are in arrest. They're needing arrest. And get them work out the problem of their liability now. It's under color of authority, a theft by extortion. It's also felony conversion. And if they can start pushing that, I think they start pushing the barrier back that these people in the future may not think that they can come on and do what they did. That requires the 50 members or whatever number of members to come together to be the unified resistance, peaceful as it was, folks. We don't have to do this necessarily. Like I told you, I'd like to stop the revolution. I want to get off that wheel. I want to get off the revolution, and so we don't have to say, here it comes again. We want to stop it. So hats off to those people, and it's not over, but it gives you an example, and this is all I'm trying to show you, is examples of how you can empower yourselves, notwithstanding we shouldn't have to. That came up with the meeting as well, for us in the Mining Association meeting. We shouldn't have to. That's right. But that's not reality. Right now, the reality is we do have to. So thank you very much for those in Canada that are working there and for themselves, defending themselves against this authority, this color of authority that really is a crime. Then the ridiculous thing you have to do is to start looking like something you're not. You have to start taking on political natures, like communism, in order to protect individual rights, which you'd find in a Republican form representative government that's actually operating under law and not rule o' law. So hats off again. congratulations to all you folks, and my prayers to you all to continue and give it even stronger. So let's move on to the norm in the nation. As we keep it on going here and finding out we really aren't responding correctly in more places than was apparently correctly responded to in Ontario, Canada. Remember, I think on Ottawa or Ontario, that's where I've identified the off-gassing from the Bessie Davis nuclear reactor that they blamed on FukUzilla. Remember that? I had that all done, all the video and the infrared satellite. I declared it. They then announced it. The government came out, the highest readings that they've ever had in radiation. They blamed it to FukUzilla. I said, no, that came from Bessie Davis. But the other reason is the airflow can't get there. And then I started to go on, and I started to explain to you why everyone said, well, the monitoring, they're cutting out the monitoring because they don't want to know how much FukUzilla is destroying the mainland of America and the British Columbia up in Canada and all that, and all the way down to Florida, folks. Remember, the air masses never went to Florida, and it was within days Florida was being attacked by FukUzilla. And I told you what the reason why the EPA was not monitoring for is because they found out there was nothing coming from FukUzilla. FukUzilla was not coming. It wasn't going to make it here, but then they realized that there were increased radiation levels, and they were cutting them off so that you didn't start to figure out that those radiation sources were local. And so we reacted wrongly in general. We accepted that FukUzilla was coming to attack us. There was no other beastie to stop FukUzilla but our fear. And that today we're still talking about FukUzilla attacking the oceans and killing everything off. And yet, here's the news, folks. This is what I was suggesting to you. Not in America, though. Someplace else. Radioactive honey found near nuclear power station. Honey contaminated with nuclear waste has been found near a disused power station in Scotland. Scientists have confirmed with samples of the product testing positive for elevated radioactivity. The samples showed levels of radioactive cesium-137 that are 14 times higher than the samples of honey that from elsewhere in the UK, prompting the scientists to call for an investigation into wider contaminations at the site. Well, let's stop right there. I don't want to read so much more. It's just a notice to us. Remember, they were talking that cesium-137 was the end-all, be-all to prove FukUzilla attacked your town. Well, this story says that they said, and the way they said this was pretty slick, cesium-137 was in there and identified 14 times higher than the samples from honey from elsewhere in the UK. Does not say it's 14 times higher than what they're saying is normal. Maybe all of the UK is over-radiated, and this is 14 times higher than that is not stated, and I don't know. So within this, there's even a question. What's not a question is I think Beethra just killed FukUzilla. I think Beethra just demolished FukUzilla. This stuff is local, folks. It has been local. There's no science, there's no proof anywhere that FukUzilla could attack anywhere outside of Fukushima. Think about how this works, and think about what we used as information and how far our society is willing to go to fear and the doom, and our brain stops working. Pretty fascinating. I want to remind you, though, way back when, a year ago, I guess, debunked Fukushima radiation reaches West Coast. So this was all after. Remember, I was telling you this in 2011. And I tell you this only not to rehash it more than to remind us we really have a lot of work to do to contain our emotional side and start to think rationally and in the moment. This should have not have been a story in just at the end of March. Should not have been a story, except to feel for the people in Japan. That's not going away. Those people are going to have problems. I said that the whole time. But back in 2014, it was confirmed again what I had said in 2011. And how did I do it, folks? I went to the internet, this amazing tool called the internet, with the amazing tools of our science, having sensors out there that we can all tap into now. But recent reports of slightly higher than normal radiation levels on the beach of San Francisco have been investigated with GeigerCounter.com, and they found that it's a natural occurring radioactive material like granite. Remember, that was the AJ had his crew running out from Texas to go investigate this, and they just happened to meet up with a university professor who was able to actually look at the spectral analysis of the materials they got off the beach. And they found out it was rock. They found out it was naturally occurring rock right there in the cliffs that ended up on the beach as sand. Remember, it was thorium and radium. And there was others. So, this was not hard to figure out. That I was wanting to, again, we're crickets in the response of how we're supposed to respond. We certainly love to feel comfortable in the fear and dooms and gloom, and then not take any more action than that. That it's been an ongoing proof. Now we see the earmark, the thing that they're saying is the end-all be-all to say that FukUzilla did it is proven not to come from FukUzilla and to be just what you'll read when you have local radiation contamination. They even describe, to my mind, that part even as wrong. Because we don't know what 14 times the elevated area is, because we don't know if that area is actually not also contaminated like I suspect it is. And that said, we seem to do okay, and at this point, I don't know how to, if we want to talk about radiation causing cancer and all this, well, we don't know. We're so polluted as a people, boy, in lots of ways, mind, body, and spirit as well, but from our own industry, what government gives license to do to us in the quest for the almighty buck. So these fictional things that I don't know where any contamination would be coming from that would be causative of some response that we have called cancer or any of these other diseases. But the point here to me proves Beethra kills FukUzilla once and for all, where we find cesium-137 in the honey right near a local nuclear reactor in Scotland. And so now we have to start looking elsewhere for either our pacification or to act about what's going on in the world and who done it. So what also happened based in this FukUzilla thing, remember at the time there was the British Columbia coast was getting the elevated radiation. And a scientist came out and said that in studying the radiation on the coast, that he found that it wasn't caused from FukUzilla, and he got completely beat down. And he was saying the same thing I was, only he was a scientist and did the study and did the data recovery. And again, my view is it's local. It's not coming from Fukushima. And I've explained over many broadcasts how it was almost impossible for all of that to even get to this side. It's just impossible. I just can't see how much of it could get there. When you realize what the materials are that you're dealing with, and you realize the actual energies that were involved to get things into the environment, and in particular the stuff that's in the water, you're dealing with things like heavy water. It literally is heavy. It's a molecule that's way heavier than water. It has to sink just like the particles that make up the radioactive, the cesium. That's a particle. This is not magic. These are particles that do this. These are molecules that have specific gravity relative to other specific gravities. They require certain energies to get into the environment to certain places. That Jay Colin never expected the world of hate he encountered when he began to post scientific information about the impact of the Fukushima accident on the Pacific Ocean. Now, even the accident is under question. It has been for a long time, but notwithstanding, I want to point to what happens, what people do, and the cricket. They are the crickets, the wrong response to sitting down and looking at data, even. See, we can do this with the IPCC. We look at their data, and it's all screwed up, so we know right off the bat. We don't even have to get to the models. When they when they denied the existence of the sun, I don't even have to think about it hard anymore. Do I? Really? But this was not so clear, and so we have a scientist doing measurements. And we're going to find, I've told you before, those sensors, those measurements don't tell you the source. I've said this forever. I mean, for as long as this thing became an issue. I was trying to get people to get off of this fear-mongering they'd even do to themselves. And apparently what happens to me when I do this is people click away. They don't want to hear it no more, or they don't want to hear it, which I guess is okay. But what are we doing then? What are we doing to resolve these things? What are we doing to kind of get people calmed down to look at the reality of what's going on? Criticism was anticipated, but then he started getting death threats. And so now we're back to this thing where we start hearing the climate change professors as academia calling for the death of anybody that's so-called a denier. And I'm still trying to have them figure out to tell me why they don't believe in the sun. But they want death because I want to have that question answered. And they wanted this scientist's measurements that couldn't find that Fukushima was the actual source. They wanted him dead. So this is not necessarily limited. This religiosity is not necessarily limited in certain places of reason at all. I mean, I don't think any of it's sitting in reason, but I mean, it's not limited to, let's say, academia. People make this stuff up as well. After the Japan nuclear reactor melted down in 2011 following an earthquake and tsunami, fears arose that radiation would pollute the Pacific and spread to Canada's west coast. To address those concerns, which didn't go away even after ocean scientists reported relatively low levels, folks, I keep telling you, they were reporting the levels. I was suggesting to you exactly to go look at the ocean currents to know that their levels, by the nature, by reality, must be low, if at all existent, if provable to Fukushima. But then I said, but then that's clouded at some point now with the local contribution. So that's a wash, right? We're in the ocean currents, that's a wash. If there could be coming over. And then I told you the cesium-137 is not necessarily the marker that you're being told it is. That scientists were coming out, though it wasn't much in the news. And I kind of have a little statement I put out on the Twitter. Beyond media here behind the woodshed, folks. Beyond media. We're trying to use what they call media, the government notice to y'all, to give you the tools to go after who's attacking you. Whether or not the transparent attack that's going on you, I'm trying to get you to see it so you can respond to it. And I can't do this alone. It's now gone. This is repeated over and over now, more and more. More and more people have to start stepping up. It can't be done even by the few of us that know about it. And you see with the TPP just kind of sailing through, massive, it's a felony, folks. It's just, I can just tell you, a small group of people made the decision for you. Those are stakeholders. That's a felony. They can't use the color of authority that they're doing anything and represent you or represent themselves, saying that you're represented by their representation and not be a felony under the color of some authority. When the government representatives, so-called, get this, they will be felons if you know how to tell them that. And I would say do that, send them a letter, show them how. A color of authority that imposes taking the right of somebody, the property of somebody, the interest of somebody under the color of authority is a felony theft by extortion. It also converts it is person in the law, but so I have to speak. I was actually thinking the law. A person is actually the one that protected. They're not even supposed to touch men and women. But you speak through the statute, so not even a person is supposed to be affected in their rights, property, and interests by a third party, and you're not supposed to do it whether by the commission or the omission of an act of the duty, and all you have to do is find out that the act was unlawful. Well, if they don't have if you're not a party, and they come under the color of authority that they created that they were, that's a felony theft by extortion. We have to start asserting this. But a scientist comes up, he does his measurements. He couldn't find, I think I remember reporting on this, but he couldn't find his measurements were high enough, nor could the measurements show and prove a Fukushima source. They just found that there was these non-elevated radiation levels. And this scientist, trying to find the truth, apparently. I have a hard time with this because I believed that there wouldn't be anything. So, I mean, in a way, I've got a conflict of interest to say this guy was right, in a way, but not because it was the truth. That when this guy found this, they wanted to burn this guy on the stake. And so we have a real problem in this country and around the world with really being able to discern what's really real. And I'm talking beyond our distrust generally of things like government and all that. I mean really looking at things, because ultimately we have the decision to make. Ultimately we have a choice to make, and we have an action to do upon that choice. And if we don't have the action, that lack of action is presumed and accepted by the continuation as a consent of the choice in favor of what's moving at the time. So to address those concerns about this radiation, which didn't go away even after ocean scientists reported relatively low levels, Dr. Cullen started a radionuclide monitoring program in 2014. The Integrated Fukushima Ocean Radionuclide Monitoring Project, or INFORM, as he optimistically called it, worked with a broad network of scientists to gather the latest research and distribute it to the public. Quote, the goal and the motivation was that people were asking me, family and friends and the public at large, what the impact of the disaster on the BC and on the North Pacific and on Canada, he said. I started looking for quality monitoring information so I could answer those questions as honestly and accurately as I could. So what's the first casualty in war but the truth? I think we're seeing this. Another open war. The evidence, folks, the deed tells you, as we see labor code tells us all about that. You know you're in martial law. You know you're under an occupation. You know you're in a military condition when you see the evidence of it all. When the elements are there. When it walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, waddles like a duck, flies like a duck. It's probably a duck. Shortly after he began blogging about the findings, which showed just about zero risk to the environment and the public in North America, he became the target of a hate campaign. The attacks went far beyond fair criticism. He was not only called a shill for the nuclear industry and a sham scientist, but he had told, and he and other researchers who were reporting that Fukushima radiation wasn't a threat deserved to be executed. So enough that said, I just want to point out there were voices. I was concurrent with this before, but not because I did measurements, but because reality, the dynamics of the Earth, and what we know about it, at least what I knew about it, would not allow for the type of radiation everybody was fearing about and selling the iodide tablets over and causing FukUzilla to destroy everywhere. I pointed out them at the time. I don't want to go back and go over it again. But we really have a problem in this country, in the world in some regard, of really looking at the correct things. And it's really difficult to kind of see that. And I suspect part of it's because in school they don't teach you, they don't give you any real knowledge to understand this reality. They give you what they want you to know. As my electronics instructor told me when I asked him about the anomalies I noticed in the textbooks. Like, well, if your theory is this and then you do that you can't get there from here. I mean, or this would be the result. And he would always smile, big smile, and he'd tell me every time. He'd tell me, "You're not going to need to know that or answer that where you're going." And he was absolutely right. It didn't mean that those anomalies didn't exist. And so part of my mind was always keyed on those anomalies. And partly because I also had another thought about the reality that's not constrained by science, so-called. And it said there was these anomalies were pointing to a better truth. And so we still have to, don't abandon your better truth in you. But here we have people who are doing measurements and coming up with thought because of the meme that FukUzilla was attacking everywhere, and we were going to die. And everyone got blown away by that model, or that little cartoon of the radiation coming like some rippling wave radiating out from Fukushima. They bought into that. They bought into the cartoon, and that's what set, the people were brilliant that did that. They set the mind of everybody who believed it and didn't question, even to some basic level. And they got people not to question. That here we have radioactive honey in Scotland, proven to be not from FukUzilla. Beethra did it, and kind of quiet going on in the front, but that was the problem. If they keep talking about this, here's the first evidence there. The porcelain is cracking about the sources of your radiation. It's not too hard to figure out now. So this contamination is a attack against people, is really everywhere. I'm not sure what y'all feel about this. I've long since stopped thinking about it. I just know the system is made to make its own profits, and the medical profession and the pharma and bio is not necessarily all it's cracked up to be, for sure. All these charitable organizations aren't necessarily all they're cracked up to be. But if those of you in France may want to understand this, and this is probably going to spread as it goes on, France ends law banning blood donation from gay men. Now, I'm not a proponent that there's an HIV kind of condition. I think there was a big fraud around that. But there is a condition, I suppose, that there's a problem with you exchanging blood anyway. But there's also a problem with how your body responds to a lot of these things. And you can defeat your system that can put it into a condition where the effect looks like what they call AIDS, because we have lost our ability to understand about nutrition and how to keep it going and up and what to do and what not to do. But I think you all need to know that France is going to allow what I would be considering the contamination of the donation of blood by gay men, because the general prohibition was a prejudice pursuant to, I think they said, gender or sexual orientation. So you have to understand how debased legal has become. You know, it's always been I was told by my mother, she said, when in doubt, throw it out. I don't know why you want to talk about the precautionary principle? Why not this? But no, they're not going to do that. France is going another way. France has decided to end a more than 30-year-old law that banned gay men from donating blood, a measure originally put in place to stop the spread of diseases such as HIV. And HIV is not the only one, folks. There's other diseases. They won't take your blood if they test it. So this has now fallen out of favor of being something they want to test against. Health Minister Marisol Touraine said on Wednesday discrimination against potential blood donors on the basis of sexual orientation was unacceptable because it presumed that gay men all had HIV. That might be true, folks, but and it is true that non-gay people have HIV. But when you have a class of people that can be identified somehow, and it may be the lifestyle more than actual fact, don't know. I'm not gay, so I don't actually know. I can only look in, and maybe not with one eye because I don't want to see so much. But at any rate, I mean, there's somebody's got to be looking at that a lot closer. Something that the government touted as such an extreme harm to society for a country just 30 years later, based on sexual orientation. Is that a scientific standard? I think you know where that's going. So it's up to you, folks. Keep getting your blood. Now get in and go ahead and get in France. You know, it's kind of like getting a vaccine. It's like you're just throwing the dice, it seems. So these types of gender neutrality and everything. This is the new diversity principles that come underneath the sustainable development, that come underneath this Agenda 2030, that comes underneath what the moral authority baton was handed by Obama to the Pope. All right, who was given moral authority. He's been handed the moral authority to determine for you all about how you're going to live. And he's come out and already said you have a social mortgage on the world. You humans. And I'm glad to hear more voices delineating these distinctions. Humans are the animals, all right? You go by the dictionary. It's an evolution from an ape. There's no proof of any of that. I don't care. I don't know of anybody that can prove to the contrary. I don't even have to cert a proof. I just know that there's no proof that existed. But humans is a term, and they use that in legalism, which should bother you. And then we have man and woman and those kinds of things, whether I can call those a status, those a reality. That the United States Code dealing in legalisms says humans are animals and treat you as animals. You can I'll find it everywhere. Not everywhere, but wherever they write it. Remember Title 21, the United States Code, Title 7, United States Code, referring over to Title 50, where they get to the government gets itself licensed to hurt you. And all this comes out of this idea that you are livestock, essentially. And I think it's Title VII. It actually says that man is a pest animal worse than a parasite. I've read that on the broadcast. I don't go back over this stuff all the time. I guess maybe I should, but maybe not. I don't know. It's there. It's there for you to read. I just talk about this stuff in context of subject matter to kind of catch everybody's attention next, and then we go to the next thing, and then we go to the next thing. And I'm not trying to just go to the next thing and we lose it down the memory hole. I'm trying to show you, try to touch somebody somewhere and what they think they believe, that they need to go research better. And if I'm having to tell you that, then you're not really necessarily doing something, and you haven't got enough knowledge to go do something with what your knowledge is. And that's what I'm trying to do, is try to show you these things are here. We don't have to focus on certain things. We certainly have to focus on other, but more importantly, like the people in Ottawa, you need to respond. But this moral authority of this world we want, not us, them, coming on, was handed to the Pope. And so here we have evidence of the moral authority. If we didn't know it before, it's more proof of how moral this authority is. Vatican inspectors suspect key office was used for money laundering. I don't even want to read more. That's it. Exclusive Vatican inspectors suspect key office was used in money laundering. Do I suspect? No, it's been going on, all right? The bank, the Vatican bank is the central, is Mafia Central. Remember, they're a state that's just an influencer at the UN. And they've been handling the moral authority over the world, over situations of economic importance. And we have it right here. The offices are used for money laundering. And some people may have found interest that the Vatican made an arrest of 2 people. And so you start to see what I was talking about before, just to show you it's a state. It's a literal government. It has its own. The Holy See is different than the Vatican City, different than the municipality of the Vatican City for its ruling. It's different than the Pope itself. On and on and on. It's like these nested legalisms that look like a state. All these organs are organized just like you are. You have a liver, a heart, a pancreas, lungs. They're organized to make you a state, if we want to go there for international law purposes. And we can do that. So you have every state has a police force. And here it has. So how did this little bitty church arrest people? Well, because they have a police force. And then we have an article, if you want to see, coming out of the Washington Post. They tell you now, it's now out in the open. They'll tell you everything's being told to us now. How this all lays out. If we just got to put I'm telling you that we have to put importance on these things, and it's important to put importance on these things. And then we see how the world is situated. It's not some ethereal idea. It's not some religiosity. It's not some spiritual thing. It's a functioning, decrepit, deceitful, of the world place. No higher aspiration than the buck, like any other legal entity. Technically, Vatican City is an independent sovereign state. Technically. Why the adjective there, folks? Why the question? Vatican City is an independent sovereign state. However, it's far from an ordinary one. Yeah, it's got the moral authority of the world handed to it by the biggest brute and club and thug in the world, in Obama, and what he represents and what he does in the world, handed to this guy who's now we see has money laundering going off in his offices. Pretty far from being ordinary, don't you think? And you have to understand when you go back and read about how these were done. Remember, I told you way long ago in about 1100, what was it? 1056 was a Battle of Hastings or something, and right after that, the new king came in, and after a few years, he's going, well, where's my property? See, the king, not the crown is the finances. The king is an office, and he's supposed to look out for the realm. But as a man, after a while, he got tired. Well, where's my property? And when you find that little story, you need to read about that. That's a fascinating read when you start realizing how this world has been chopped up. And so that was a real important thing. Where was the king, the man of the king? Where was his property? What was his stuff? And you know where they went to find how they were going to give the man of the king, not the office of the king and his obligations and duties there. You know where they went to find the authority to allow and provide for the man of the king to have property? They went to the church. The ecclesiastic power, as I tell you the 5 issues of sovereignty, the 5 elements of sovereignty, already had the answer. So we have the secular moving into religiosity, invoking the establishments of the church into public use. That's where you hear the term corporation soul. And where I want to now revert over to Ottawa and the farmers going into legalisms to create an interest in a property and then its productive capacity. You have the ability here in this corporation soul. You have to look very carefully at these things. These are kind of dangerous to deal with, but they're not once you see them, what they do. This is what isolated the man's property from the state. But this is what legal entities use as well to isolate themselves from their other parts and from the world. And so you look into that. Be careful in what you find. Don't run around waving a flag like you know. It takes a long time of study to figure these things out. But that's what the government, the secular governments, since then have relied upon to give the officers that were in these types of governments private property to the man in the office, not the officer like in the status of the king. So I say that because this is what they've done. The legalisms in Ottawa, which were underneath it wasn't untrue that they had to go to the extent to actually make legal contracts of interest. It's illegal. It actually reduces down to a contract, but then they actually went into purchasing the farm, a share in the farm. Now that's a double legalism. But this is what you start to have to resort to when your law failed. Because in the first instance, the farmer, the rancher, the milkman, the cow, whatever you want to call it, the farmer and rancher, the man on the land, the woman on the land, stewarding, as they say, stewardship, the one who's in dominion of that land to best use it, has the right of the fruits of that land that's not regulable. But see how it's all been twisted because there's no law. There's rule o' law. There's these interposers called the Bar Association, their members, these functionaries, these systems, these establishments, these people that were in existence at the time before the king said, where's my stuff? How much have I talked about? I'm so far off of the story here. But this is what invokes in me when I read these things. I'm just identifying all these things and keeping track of the world in this way. And it tells a different story to me. It allows me to look in different places where most people, FukUzilla, for me it's not FukUzilla. I can identify that it's only FukUzilla, and that's just another movie monster. Beethra just came and destroyed. Isn't that wonderful? So let's go on to the next movie fear, I guess. A walled enclave in the Italian capital of Rome, the Vatican occupies just 110 acres, a geographically size that makes it the smallest state in the world. Last year, its population was estimated at 842, and this tiny state happens to be a geographical center of the Roman Catholic Church, one of the oldest religious institutions in the world and the largest denominations of the Christian faith. That's another lie. I just put a fraud with more than 1.25 billion members nationwide. Enough. So in a state as unusual as this, how is criminal justice handled? Well, it's not an unusual state from the standpoint of a state, folks. It's just like any other state, and it's going to have its own police force. So here, some people may have found interest in this. I thought, okay, well, here's another point to point out. This little thing, this little enclave, it has all the functions of a state. It's independent. It's immune from politics in some regard, and it's the controller of all the politics. And the politics has been reduced to commerce and economy. And it's got the moral authority to determine all this now. It also has the systemic control, but I've already talked about all that. That the news here is telling us how this is laid out so that we can start to understand more. And it really was more confirming what I was telling you by going through Sun Tzu, Art of War, how if this is a state, there must be a military that protects it, not the bodyguards from the Swiss. No, the state protection. The military, and I surmised and conjectured there'd be a general, and guess what, folks? Within a week or 2 weeks, it's been proven that's exactly how this thing is set up. That I wanted to again focus you. If they got police and they've got the state and they've got these enclaves and they've got all this other nonsense going on, they have their judicial system, they have their way they're doing it. This is a government, and you better take note of that. because this government has been around for a long, long time, they tell you right here. It's very influential. It's got 1.25 billion people in the world duped, folks. This is no small potatoes organization. This thing is so transparent to people. It's always fascinated me. It's kind of irritated me for a long time. That people support these things and don't even understand. I've talked about this before, but it came up again. I didn't really realize the time. November 5th, I think it has to do with a movie. It was called V, I think it was. In fact, I haven't gone back to even research it. I just see this Million Mask March, and I go, okay, I've talked about this before. And so I wanted to know about this character that in the movie was cool. It had all these great kind of neat things to talk about. Nice. If it was not attached to a political message, it was a nice message for people. Romantically ending at the end. Beautiful stuff. And then you go find out who this Guy Fawkes is. And you realize that mask that was made, this is a branding of an organization after you start looking deeper. Guy Fawkes, when you go find out what he did, what was the Powder Keg Rebellion or something? He wanted to blow up Parliament in Britain. He was a Jesuit. And so, just brilliantly, this mask, who now the anonymous group so-called take on, is the brand for the Jesuit order today. And people buy into it. There's a Million Mask March that went on in London. It happened. I'm reading the title right here. Guy Fawkes mask at Trafalgar Square met with significant policing operation, including thousands of extra officers to tackle the expected unrest. Okay, fine. They just got a bunch of people to buy this mask. That's a money profit to the movie system, to buy a mask that's branded for the Jesuit order, that's been a sensationalized and romanticized guy who was attempting to take out a government, working for the Jesuits to advance the general's agenda for the Catholic Church. And Anonymous picks this up. Are you kidding me? Are we that ignorant and stupid? Maybe so. I don't know. I'm hoping not. I'm hoping that this is all a big joke. I'm hoping I wake up soon and it was a joke. It was just a little bit of a nightmare. I kind of doubt it, but here we are. Million, folks. Think about all the Guy Fawkes masks that I don't know which movie company has the trademark on. And when you buy one, a little bit of money goes to support that. But this is the branding and promotion, acceptance and re-promotion by people, embrace of a world of people, millions. And what it does is it's now the brand face of the Jesuit order and its cause. It's fascinating to me to tie in the rest of the stuff that we have been. I hope it's fascinating to you at some level. I mean, I'm hoping, again, I don't know, maybe I'm just boring enough, there's not enough information coming out that's usable, and people kind of click away. I don't know about that. All I know is I use this stuff that may seem uninteresting to put my world together, and it starts making sense to the point that I can use this knowledge locally. It doesn't seem like it, I guess. It won't seem like it if you haven't used it. But I can do it locally. In fact, this came up in the meeting here this Friday. Someone had tried to, and I just want to see the truth and right action come out, but someone tried to come in and explain to us how it was going to be, and never looking at what we've done or who we are as a people in our little group, and what we've actually really done and what we know. And when it was started we were putting up the proper resistance about, well, what your plan is okay, but it's not really, it doesn't answer everything, and it doesn't answer what you think it answers, and it's not complete either. And we'll help you to work on it, but we have other things that the guy who started to get challenged a bit, he started making it, starting as a local issue, it became bigger and bigger. Until pretty soon, well, you don't understand what's coming from Washington to destroy you. Well, yes, we do. And I said, well, you must not, if you stopped at Washington, you must not understand this is coming from an international source. And so this became one of these, almost like, a little bit bigger hammer, a little bit bigger hammer, a little bit bigger hammer, to try and get through the idea when he was challenged that maybe he wasn't aware of what other people were aware of. But knowing that this stuff comes from an international source. And then I just acknowledged, I said, listen, this thing goes international. and it's bigger than every one of us. And it's going to take every one of us to defeat. Pretty well as much, there's nothing to debate about that. That this is what, knowing this stuff in an international level, being able to tie all the strings together, that, macrames into something that's usable by other people against you to hang. It's a macrame rope to hang you with. It is very important for you all to get underneath your belt when you venture out to do the things you think you're going to do. This is that thing I was telling you about, that they work on you, the protocols of the elders of Zion. They have techniques on how to work out how to diminish what you actually do know and what you actually are doing. And so you have to be subtly protective of that as well. Maybe not so subtly, but there has to be that knowledge in you about this, that your comprehensive understanding of how this comes together, the puzzle pieces, how they all come together, and that it is a global waging of war on people has to go beyond opinion, and has to go down when you see stuff that you can tie these points together. That when I saw the Million Mass March, I forgot about it. It kind of hit me as a surprise. I looked down and it was, oh yeah, okay, November 5th. The date triggered a vague memory, and I go, oh, these guys are doing this still. I forgot about that. That you need to know that these people are so brilliant that they have millions of people around the world wearing this mask, paying for it, supporting them financially as well, to re-promote something that was actually a Jesuit order attack on another government. Which some people might say, good, have two governments attacking each other, but we're actually talking about the people, and so I'm not so sure about that either. That this deception and delusion and the obfuscation and the transparency of what's actually behind the scenes, to get people, this is just evidence to me that the protocols of the elders of Zion, the conference on the notes of how you take advantage of human nature, the animal nature that you are, the human nature, is an example right here. We see it every year now since that movie. For as romantic as I thought the end was, and for as cool as some things that were said, and as inspirational as the context of the statements were in that movie, and to find all the V words that you can string together in one sentence, how creative was that, folks? You do that. Pretty interesting. All the tools of deception to create a brand that people embrace in something that has been working to destroy the world for all these times, enough to dupe 1.25 million people, and that was inside the religion. These guys wearing the mask are probably not thinking that they're inside that religion. Is a fascination to me. It's kind of a fun joke to watch it, except if it didn't mean that we're going to be hurt by it all. Think about the dynamic here, how people are persuaded. FukUzilla is doing it. How often, folks, since 2011 do we hear all the media regurgitate FukUzilla? We pause this for a little while, you don't hear it for a little while, then they bring it back. They talk about all the animals that died from FukUzilla attacking and chomping on all the beasties in the ocean. And I tell you, well, wait a minute now, you forgot that they dumped a whole bunch of iron in the ocean up there. And I don't want to inflame your passion for this, but I want to mention, I didn't talk about it, I don't like to talk about it because I don't really know. I already have my own proof on certain things about the HARP project that I like to keep more sane than what I hear. So I don't want to inflame that, but I do want to mention, when you put a lot of iron into a liquid conductor, you've got something there that a radio frequency might be able to tune into. And I don't know that that's actually what happened. I think the natural, if you will, fertilization of iron in the ocean and the algae was a plenty large destruction that we don't need to go to the high Aral whatever program up there for that. But we don't know. When you're talking about being able, at least some patents saying you can actually shake the earth, I don't know if that wasn't an amplifying, a constraining, a focusing agent. Right up there in British Columbia, and right where this deposit would be floating down in the ocean, which has upwelling too, so there would have been some carrying capacity in the ocean there to bring it farther south. That's right along the big subduction zone up there. No, we didn't see much happen. Oh, we saw the We saw the sea beasties start dying. We found out that the salmon stopped coming in. The exact thing that they said they were going to do it for, to enhance the fishery, they found out it repulsed it. I said, well, when you take all the oxygen, because all these beasties are flourishing and sucking all the oxygen out of the ground and making carbon dioxide, sequestering carbon and all this nonsense they said was going to do. The animals, other animals that can swim and get away, they will, because there's no oxygen to breathe. And they did. They found the salmon out way farther out in the ocean. So there's a dynamic here, but I wanted to, there's lots of things that we don't know about that are going on. We don't know who's doing these experiments. They're not giving us knowledge that they are trying to affect your life. They're hiding the fact that the radiation's all around you, that now we have, Beethra is now invaded your honey bears. Who'd have thunk it? If you looked at FukUzilla, you would have never thought that. But here's the proof that it's all around us. These people that are doing these things that they want to, the world we want, are killing us. There has to be groups of people that start addressing everything beyond what I talk about behind Woodshed, the subject matters. We have the example of how it works. 50 people get together on a farm share contract of ownership and maybe rights in the cow, that kind of thing. Unified, running like a fire, house of fire, to solve it is what we have to start doing as groups of people with our relative skills and interests. So in the news, also, just as an acknowledgement, but not so, this is how close we are. It's in the Rolling Stone, so-called. They want to call themselves Rolling Stone. I guess that gathers no moss. So I don't know what is that coming down as an avalanche on our head. I don't know. We owe you conspiracy theorists an apology. Is a pretty big insult to me as I read that. Not that I'm a conspiracy theorist, but that tone. You can't be a conspiracy theorist that's owed an apology, because at the time you find that whatever that was being said was on, it's not a theory. It's not a theory that relates back to the time it was trying to be exposed, that the deniers of this conspiracy were making it. That this story comes out, we owe you conspiracy theorists. It's an apology I found very important, because what it's coming in the time it's coming is to accept and get out in a false way who the active members are, at least the way I see it. I mean, not the active members as far as the players. Remember I told you there's lots of tips and lots of spears. There was 1,000 swords in that throne that Obama was sitting on. There's spears all over. There's the implementing action on every shaft they're giving you. That this story was important on a couple of ways. The system, the media, is coming out to tell you, we don't care, we think we got this thing in the bag. But they insult you in the same way, and then they focus you on the other thing. Just like everyone doesn't understand they're promoting a Jesuit branding by wearing that Guy Fawkes mask, supporting some guy who was actually advancing some political undermining of another political government for political reasons, to gain control of that government and those people. Conspiracy theorists of the world, believers in the hidden hands of the Rothschilds and the Masons and the Illuminati, we skeptics owe you an apology. You were right. The players may be a little different, but your basic premise is correct, and that was the clue, folks. This is what I wanted to point out. They will not tell you who these players really are. They know this. How would they know to say that unless they knew what the players were? But there it was. We found this out in recent months. What's been saying for years, certainly partly behind the Woodshed, and partly not, because I didn't come out real strong about the Pope and all that lineage up until you would all see it in the news. And I did that back in last year, December or January, I don't remember exactly when, but to say this thing is coming. But I didn't talk about the Rothschilds. You don't hear me talk about it too much. We reference the economic order. That's kind of implying them. I don't talk about the Masons too much. There's lots of people that'll tell you all about that. I don't talk about the Illuminati. I don't care about the one-eye stuff. Oh, it's there. You can notice it, but it's not something I focus on. I just notice it and keep moving. Because these names, I've told you, don't put blinders on what you think is going on. Don't put yourself in the constraint of a title. Don't let these people title what you're seeing. You have to identify it. And you shouldn't put a name on it either. You got to put it in a function. at least in that one regard. That this little story is them sticking it in your their nose at you, thumbing their nose at you, saying, we're so close, you were right, but then they misinform you. So that you still, when you respond, you start patting yourself on the back, you think it's all done and you go to sleep, first of all. Secondly, if you do go, I got it, and you go start digging in more like you think it is, you're digging in the wrong spot. They come on to say your premise is correct. The world is a rigged game. I'm accepting this without reading to the very end. I just wanted to point out, to me, this is a notice to us. If this is all like an onion, it doesn't matter to me. This is part of the truth in fiction, even, if you will get that part. The world is a rigged game. Remember, the fix is in. The London gold fix. Remember, William Roberts and I used to joke about that. That used to be one of those little things we used to play off on. Yeah, the fix has been in. Nobody, crickets, folks. Crickets on this stuff. And remember, I told you this underpinnings is a lot of it, mainly focused on economic control. If they got you by your energy needs, and we can see money, if I could say it this way, money is anything of medium exchange for value that you think is. Money is currency. Currency is electrons now. It's current. It's energy. They're keeping control of this energy. And as long as you need to keep plugging in, silent weapons for quiet wars, if you plug into that circuit, they have a place for you to plug in. And that circuit is designed to use you for its ends. Kind of like plugging RAM into a computer. You just sit there as some inert thing that they use your vessel to work through. You just happen to be an animated vessel of memory and response that they know about you so well that they'll give you a place to choose to insert yourself, and you become part of that machine, like the Matrix. The world is a rigged game. We found this out in recent months when a series of related corruption stories spilled into the financial sector. Is that all, folks? Is that all these Rolling Stone sees? Finally? No. They go on to talk about LIBOR and all that. I don't want to talk about more. Actually, I just start looking at this stuff. Why am I even talking about this? Those of you that know this, know this. I'm asking those of you that know this to start responding. Find where this goes in locally to you and do something. They are telling us the truth, but they're telling us the lie. They're misfocusing us. They're admitting to the fact. They agree that they insult you by calling you a conspiracy theorist, which means that you're not. And they keep maintaining the insult. And then they they point to the wrong points, or they touch a couple of the things. Folks, even if that was a lie, what they said, you'd believe it, because look at it. Look how good you feel. Your ego steps in. See, I'm kind of unaffected. The Rothschilds and Masons, Illuminati, okay, I've seen all these evidences, but that's not who I've been focused on. So whether or not that's the truth or not, I'm looking at a functioning thing in the world. And that functioning thing is pervasive everywhere I look. And that starts to make a question on me, for me, about my mind. Am I gone nuts? Well, so you test that. If I'm nuts, I can prove it. How's that? So, this is an important story to me. It admits a whole lot if you keep reading. I don't want to read too much more. They go off now into LIBOR. That's not the only problem. That's what they get you focused on. This whole system that was fixed, it's a fixed system. It's a fixed answer. Don't do the high fives with this one. Oh, well, you can do some high fives, but don't let it, maybe once. And get to work, because this is the admission. We're very, very close. At least they think that we are. Even though the admission that the internet's becoming an impediment to the advance of this thing, we're still not. We're crickets in that regard. That's why I keep going to that. We're not responding actually correctly. And knowing a thing doesn't mean you're going to deal with a thing or stop a thing or advance a thing, whatever. Just knowing of it doesn't mean anything. Even if the Rothschilds are involved, to what extent and to whom, that doesn't tell you more about the system. I could agree that the Rothschilds are part of all this, absolutely. But they're just a part of the puzzle in the whole thing that's, as I tell you, multidimensional and multifaceted. So, big story here, actually, or not a story. Well, maybe it is a story, but it's truthful, even if it's a fiction. it calls my attention to tell you you're not researching wrong. You may not be searching 100% right, but you better multiply your efforts, because this is also admission that you're dogging them pretty hard here. The LIBOR issue is not going to solve anything for you and I. But what caused LIBOR does affect us in our daily lives. And why we try to go back, for as much as it's a real hassle, educate our own people, those people in the seats of decision, as best as we can, to have them know what is really out there in an objective basis that was to protect us, and have that seat of decision help protect us while we're protecting ourselves in the way we know how to respond, like we got the evidence in Ottawa. And Michael Schmidt and his farm. And those people, and apparently those people farm share. How ludicrous is it that a farmer can't do his own thing and just sell to people? See, folks, with the production, you also have, it's called farm to market for a reason. The market's not commerce in this sense, but you have the right of farm to market. Mines are the same thing. You have mine haul roads or mine to market. That's not commerce, even though you're selling. Now, there is a discussion we can have about the medium used. That is fiat. That may be where the connection is. But you could change that initially, first of all, or you can say that's an unconscionable contract. And you can call it out pretty easily and quickly based on the fact that those people that are attacking you were also the duty to protect you. The production and the land disposal for use for the public good is the highest benefit to the public. And I say public because public is considered, I know government, but it's also considered non-people. It's corporations as well. It's just the general umbrella government sits to supposedly advance all their causes, and not to the detriment of any. Certainly not to the detriment of production, which is the mainstay of your society at all. Consider anything that you're using coming off the ground or out of the ground somehow. It took somebody, I say that body because it could be a corporation, but it could be a man or a woman. It took someone, a man or woman, someone, took somebody in a corporation or legal entity, somebody, to get that to people. That part's not supposed to suffer political imposition, and when it does, it's a felony. It's called theft by extortion, and it's called felony conversion. And you just have to find that in your statutes. Get back over to that. That's what's being attacked in these things. That when they mention Rothschilds, Masons, Illuminati, is not really what's the real problem. The real problem is they're undermining the establishment of your way of life that protected you. And they get you focused on this stuff. But it's an acknowledgement that you're there, that your research is exposed, the fix is in, folks. And the fix wasn't supposed to be in. So those that have allowed it are sitting in that felony. And maybe that's an odd word, felony. I've had a lot of time. There's quite a few words I've had to take a time to figure out, like treason's been another one. But the more I've been dealing with it, and the elements of what it is, and then the effect of when it happens, I'm easier to find that treason has happened by what it did. And then I tracked back, and that's given me a very great understanding. It's not so foreign a word to use. In its simplest form, it's the undermining of the establishment that protects your way of life. And I'm saying that in the best sense, not in the dictatorial beat you with a club, the special club, the special membership club that they beat you down with from all these clubs they make. But they're telling you that you're on it, folks. You're getting the message, but I'm telling you they're just focusing you on what's not important. What's important is the economic nature of the control. That's not so easy to see either, because they got lots of facets they use that aren't so economically driven, but you don't recognize that they're no different than when the state comes in and writes you a ticket. That's revenue driven as well. I told you that's the martial law. Everything reduces down to some bean counter being able to count it somewhere. Whether you understand that or not, that the next story, Kella to prepare basic income proposal, is part and parcel to this agenda, this global agenda, where economics is all important. The bean counters, why the Pope, the moral authority money launderer, said that environment and and economics were what he's going to control. And environment is not the trees and the bees, folks. It's the fixes in environment that he's talking about. The community they'll talk about is not your community, not your little town, not your countryside. It's their community of extortion, of organized crime. That's the environment these people talk to. And so the first thing to come out was this austerity I was telling you. They're going to take away poverty, and they're going to impose austerity, a step right above poverty. Kela to prepare basic income proposal. Think about this. The Finnish Social Insurance Institution is to begin drawing up plans for a citizen's basic income model. Boy, if that's the FukUzilla model, you're toast. So you better take real interest in this one. Not only are they going to impose a basic living, but this is your livable wage, folks. A bowl of rice a day. Eating from a beanbag chair made of styrofoam pellets in a bowl that you sit in a 200 square feet coming out of the communal kitchen. This is livable wage. That's what you're going to afford. They're making the citizens, maybe you shouldn't be a citizen in this context, right? Citizens' basic income model. The preparations director, Oli Kangas, says that a full-fledged basic income would net Finn some 800 euros a month. Folks, they're going to give you 800 euros a month in this social system. Remember, it's contributory prosperity. You're not going to get it for nothing, actually. But here's the plan. You're seeing it already roll out. I told you September 25th, the plan rolls out, and you're going to watch governments come out now, guns a-blazing on how to implement this. They're already showing you what austerity, what prosperity under 821 is. Shared contribution. And they give you a basic income. And you should be happy. You see what they said there. The income, first of all, that's a really loaded question. That means that's coming from some investment you've made, or maybe they've made in the animal, the return of which was the profit from the investment that you're getting returned to you. And you're going to net that. You understand these words? Net that to you, you beast of burden. The stories are right here to tell us how the future we want, not yours. You weren't asked, you're not a party. But the future we want is them, the money launderers, the Pope, using the criminal environment in order to economically control you and other things. Most everything reduces down to this energy we call money, of whatever description. This is telling you what I was telling you what austerity would be as looking like it was defeating prosperity. They just redefined the condition and then redefined it, and everyone says, okay, I'm netting 800, I'm getting something here. And no one goes to look at not just the fine print, looks at the transparent system that imposed it. The moral authority of which is a money launderer that comes underneath in an ecclesiastical power that's a fraud. And the fraud continues to advance the fraud. It's on and going. So once you see this, it's not real hard. It's almost like a broken record thing, and maybe that's why people may or may not want to hear more of this. I guess my problem is that I don't see much action. With all the people that should have been hearing this and understanding this and acting, we'd see a whole lot more noise. I'm not saying it's not out there. It's happening every day. More and more people are coming to it. Really, I'm thrilled to hear what Michael Schmidt did with his group of people. I'm not so thrilled to hear what they had to do. But this is the political reality. This is the environmental reality. That frauds are put on us all the time. We can predict all these things because the fraudsters have to continue the fraud by whatever method. And you'll find over time that their story doesn't. It's like any liar, the liar in chief that we have in the sitting on the 1,000th sword throne, right? Handing the mantle of moral authority to the money launderer, and worse, folks. I'm just talking about, this is the theme today about the financial construct. That part of this is that carbon market. Part of this economic control is to defeat you with all your fees that you're going to pay through these institutional services. Remember, now, ecological services, environmental services, and there's another one, excuse me, it just flew from my mind. These services they offer that speak to the environment, that's really just amenities. Those aren't anything substantial. This is like dealing with the color of the drapes, not the necessity for the drape. These environmental services are amenities. They're ecological in their basic, but they're not valuable more than an aesthetic. They're aesthetic services. And aesthetic services in this bean counter world have no actual value. That to keep this carbon market going, they got to do what you see coming down for Paris, the Paris Treaty, what COP21. They're telling us. But if you go look at that, what is COP besides a lung disease? It's the conference of parties. Well, are you a party, folks? No, it's a stakeholder meeting. It's a conference only. How are they going to get a treaty? But this is how they work it. These are stakeholders are the only parties to this decision that are actually going to work treason. For those of the people that are in the United States that are participating in this, it'll be treason for them to come up with this sort of a deal for the people who aren't represented, who have to be imposed. But this is how the theft comes through. So while you're choking with your lung disease on all this carbon, they say, and they come up with all the theories that soot is what COP is all about, and while they have the conference on parties trying to put the Paris Treaty together, which I found some another French administrator, these people really are depraved and devoid of moral and ethical principles at all. But they promote this stuff, and we find this COP. It has nothing to do with you. It means it's a felony on your life. As soon as you know that, really, and you understand how to put that, I'd like to see you go through your state laws and through your Constitution to cause the local control for the United States, at least. All y'all folks in Europe, I don't know that thing that looks like it's been taken over. I don't know how to help you there. I think there's some fundamental laws that give you rights that you might resort to, but in the United States we have property, and that's really where I think we have to focus on, and the felony of politicization causes that we have this soot that's been used, carbon sequestering they want to do, all these excuses to bring the fear mongering on you, that this moral authority in the money laundering Pope imposing this economic order on everybody, shown again to be just a lie when people start really looking at it. These are the same people that were not so sure that everything was going on. Maybe the radiation doesn't come from Fukushima. Maybe climate change isn't so settled. Maybe the temperature's rising, not rising for 20 years. Maybe that's a reason for it. Maybe the models are no good. Well, maybe if you readjust the models, they'll come out even better. But that's not what everybody's basing this fear-mongering on, and this financial plundering system, organized criminal plundering system on everybody on the earth. It's fascinating how large the scope this is. That another report comes out along this to expose this problem. While we have our COP, we're coughing our lungs out because of all the soot. Arctic snow not darkening due to soot. Dust study finds. So here they have this sophists nightmare about how the world works, and it's not reality. Oh, the soot's covering the snow and it's causing reflected sunlight back into space and all that nonsense. I mean, it's nonsense anyway. Carbon is a trap. It should actually be heating the things, right? And we may be melting more. We have little particles. I don't know if you've noticed it. Little dark particles of soot will actually melt into the snow. But they've created this big cartoon, these models that they tell us, these theories that have never been proven, that when someone goes to look, like the scientist in British Columbia, he's hated, death threats. That for the millennia, Greenland's ice sheet reflected sunlight back into space, but satellite measurements in recent years suggest the bright surface is darkening, causing solar heat to be absorbed and surface melting to accelerate. Some studies suggest that dirty ice or dark snow is caused by fallout from fossil fuel, pollution, and forest fires. Now, let me go quickly over. Remember I told you folks, some of this stuff our brains make, the wonder that we are as men and women, our brains do tons that animals don't do. We actually have the power of dominion of our space, as long as we can figure out what that might be, to work with this earth as it supplies our needs. That we may be able to be smart enough to make sensors and instruments outside of what we may be able to see as what's been given to us. That no different than our eyes failing, our hips failing, we have problems, that we have maintenance problems to go on. That any machine we make has the same. It suffers the same weakness. That it's interesting that you always have to, like for a technician or a scientist or someone who's looking at data, you're always looking, as they say, zero your instrument, if I can put it that simply. You're looking for a 0 point, and then you got to reference that 0 point. Is that really zero? That you have to do that when you do your measurements, and you have to always monitor the veracity of the instrument's information. That this is what they start to find. Fascinating. It took everybody this long, two people or so, to come up with the idea. We better look at our instrument, because the new Dartmouth led study shows that degrading satellite sensors, not soot or dust, are responsible for the apparent decline in reflectivity in inland ice across northern Greenland. The study results suggest that ice sheets haven't lost as much reflectivity as previously thought, and the black carbon and dust concentrations haven't increased significantly and are thus not responsible for the darkening of the upper ice sheet. Maybe I recall your memory to the latest, all the explosions from volcanoes even haven't adjusted this. As I tell you, this system that we live, this solar system, and dynamic as the sun is, it's a pretty boring place. It handles itself pretty well. I won't read anymore. Again, they don't even. Now we have to go around and start thinking, well, are all the sensors that all this data is made up? Have they degraded as well? How do you zero your instrument to find out it needs to be biased in a certain way if its electronics is going down, if the way it handles the information that causes it to read is right? See, our whole observation is very limited, and as scientists, a lot of them have really fallen down on really being objective. And what are they doing, folks? They're just identifying what's already here to show you how diminished we are in our human capacity to begin with. That the soot's not a problem here. One of the big deals, causations, is not a big problem here. And yet, your whole life is about to be brought underneath a treaty that they're trying to get. Remember, it was Copenhagen. We call it Nopenhagen. Remember, they went down there and went to Copenhagen, and it came out with nothing, right? And remember, there was big fervor about that, a lot of noise. So it became Nopenhagen. Nope. Well, Paris got to become the same thing here, folks. We got to get that energy that the energy was kind of moved in by Ron Paul and all that vigor. We need to get that back on this as well. And then for those of you that are interested, you need to group up with each other and attack all these places that are being used to diminish your life and cause people like in Ottawa to have to band up in 50 group people just to defend their own right to drink raw milk of all things. And that's not all. That's your food choice, folks. It's more and more and more, and you know that. So, it's not soot. Their little instruments aren't picking up the light quite as good as they used to. No one looked at the instruments, folks. Maybe, and what's worse is what I think is going on. Those that advance this theory based on that may have known that. And if you could find that out, that might be an even worse felony against mankind. The hate, the criminal nature of the people behind this is so bad. The organizational structure is so comprehensive and ingrained that the examples, you're going to have to start looking at the martyrs, if you will, in this religious jihad against mankind, that will promote theories that can't be proven, that will promote data that hasn't been zeroed, that will deny reality is really the bottom line of all that. That when someone comes up to speak reality, you'll see how ingrained to me, this is evidence of what you're up against. And you have to think about how this works so that you can have your chess moves ahead, this whole thing. It's actually in anything. I see this in all aspects of what we've been doing. I don't focus on the carbon market. I don't focus on ICE. None of this. We focus on property rights, and we focus on what's attacking property rights that happen to get us into climate change and sustainable development, because that's really the core. As you've heard. But I don't focus on these what I consider outlying areas to what we're doing with property protection. That when you come up against this, first of all you get the denials, and then when you show it, then you get silence. It's what happened to us in our lawsuit. But sometimes you're positioned in a place that you can't protect yourself. And so I'm asking you to consider this next story of what happens not just in climate and not just in asserting this thing that as a fraud and a criminal plunder, in other aspects of the different dimensions that they're attacking. That when you step up, you're gonna watch out, protect yourself. We do protect ourselves again. Remember, we did our show cause to the Secretary of Interior. The next thing we heard is not a letter showing cause how they weren't felons and committing treason. We got a visit from the FBI, acting as an accessory to the felony and the treason they admitted when they didn't respond. That's your government. So you have to be ready for responding to these things and being able to have some protection. But this, France's top weatherman sparks storm over book questioning climate change. The science is settled, folks. So says the religious. So says the church. Philippe Verdier, weather chief at France's Television, the big old accents on the E's, the country's state broadcaster reportedly sent a forced holiday. He was sent on forced holiday for releasing a book accusing top climatologists of taking the world hostage. There's the truth. He got crucified for it. You need to carry that on. I want to read the story. It's a guy who came out to explain his view as someone who been trained to understand weather, and identified that what's going on is the world is being taken hostage. If that doesn't confirm more of what I've been telling you, there's a war against you, right down to where you live. And there's a lot of soldiers that are sitting right in the seats of decision all around you. As I've said for a long time, you're infiltrated and surrounded. You're finding yourself naked in the battlefield. What do you do? Is your choice to take the fetal position and give up? Or do you figure out what you need to do in that condition? And I've told you, I've chosen to do what I could. And when we started doing that, I started doing it, and I found other people that, had the right attitude about it, took it on in the most natural way, and then consistent, at least with my intentions. Found some more of those people that did that. We've been doing pretty good, naked in the battlefield, to really take out the enemy. But it is a war, and you have to understand that. And you're susceptible to your weaknesses, and you're susceptible to the enemy's actions. In this case, the weatherman gets taken out, put on a forced holiday. He's lucky he didn't get killed like a lot of the people that tried to expose child services and the pedophilia rings in the government, and now you see the news. It's all over the news now. Remember, that's how I got involved inadvertently, didn't know that was how big it was. I tried to do my documentary, and as I've told a couple people, I may be very lucky to have walked away from that. All they did is beat me up for 3 weeks and put me in jail and mess around with me, then threaten me with 5 years of my life. Everybody I notice now that put out a documentary about the pedophilia issue within the government and all those institutions. How I was able to tell you that in Pennsylvania there was something bigger was coming when I found out the youth judges were doing what they were doing and got caught. Once that surfaced, I said, no, this thing's way bigger. I'll bet it goes bigger in Pennsylvania. And then when they went to Sandusky, I said, this thing, because of their connections, this thing goes to Europe. Why? Because what I found, the documentary I was going to make, well, I actually had it mostly made, and they stepped in right in time. That anybody who has made one and got it out is not alive today. Has that stopped? Well, I didn't have the evidence anymore. They just took all the evidence for me to do, so I had to stop that project. I could not come up with that documentary and expose it. So I was pretty much finished that way, but did that stop me from realizing the absolute abject criminality of the system that we were involved in? No. I'm here today. We've learned a couple lessons, and we do certain things. We approach things in certain ways. We're a little bit more wiser on what's out there to come and get us if we didn't know before we know that much is there. That you have to continue to speak up. And the action, once you see something is wrong, you cannot continue unless you will become the accessory to it. Is this next thing that they're after, educating your little ones. The system that's put up, this moral authority of the bank and the money launderer in the Pope, protected by the guy that sits on the throne of 1,000 swords, is attempting to train your little ones and all of us. That's why we're so inactive today. We bought into the benefits and didn't really question them. Now we find ourselves kind of trapped and it's kind of comfortable here, so we don't think we have much to do. When in fact we'll be out of here. A lot of us older people will be out in probably 20 to 40 years, and the new order will come up. And the new order will come up because of the internal construction of the education system made by these people that are causing human population migration for profit, human slavery, animal slavery, livestock slavery. Give all these names. I've told you that I think it's Title VII of the United States Code. Man is actually worse than a pest animal. He's defined as a scourge. I can't remember the other words. It's in Title VII. You're actually defined as a man, as a worse than a pest. That if you don't step up in your where you are, the world coming on is going to be dictated to your sons and daughters. That when you see the harm, you have to act. This next story, another consequence, but done knowing what the consequence was. Teacher mother resigns from school over testing concerns. She posts her open letter resignation on Facebook. Taking responsibility, putting herself in jeopardy to some extent. She's a PhD, an educator who really took it to heart, it sounds like a true educator, got a master's and a PhD in early childhood education beyond her teaching degree. Really put her time into it. Came to the day when she started looking at what was going on and said, and had her daughter. Actually, that's what turns it. She has her daughter, and within a couple months, I can't remember the time here, but a couple months, she has to resign because she realizes what she's doing is aiding and abetting a harm to her daughter that she didn't understand until it became personal, if I can say that, private to her. And so she writes a resignation letter. Apparently it went onto Facebook. Maybe this is another, I don't want to really pump it up, but maybe this is another place for, you can get lots of people on Facebook out here. I wish they would choose a better place to go, but a lot of people got to read this. It was shared 50,000 times what she says. And I'll send you the link. Maybe you can download it when you get the story yourself, but Blogcaster will have the link. You can read it yourself. It's pretty, it's nothing that we don't already know, but coming from someone inside that takes the responsibility to not support that crime against her anymore is the example I want people to see, is the example we have to start being, and then most importantly, the doing is really the example. That the ludicrousness of what they present to us, they give us, the benefits they give us are harmful to us. And the people that are the implementers, the points of the spears, if you will, the hands on the levers that make the machine, that chews people up, grinds them into sausage, and then charges them for the privilege. We are the ones that stop this. Because what we're looking at in this system of this color of legalism, this color of authority that people sit in, the psychopaths and sociopaths have found their way in, that we were not vigilant to keep them out of. And in some part, how do you really keep up with some of these people that are really, really good at not showing you their true colors? That if we don't get this handled, we're going to be living in the hypocrisy of those that use hypocrisy to advance their cause. Another aspect that shows us, again, no different than we say that there was no soot, there was the censors, the same issue that negates the sun, and the government of the United States embracing sustainable development and climate change, which is the embrace that the sun doesn't exist, and the world is heated by a statistic. Go read the definitions, folks. It's that clear. That when I heard this story, I had to laugh. I'd laugh. I mean, okay, it was just a slight outburst. That shows we're dealing with lunatics. They embrace this statistic that's going to just literally kill off your industry, kill off your way of life, attempt to kill you off. And I'm hearing crickets on it. And then in the next breath, they come out and the White House releases a plan to deal with space weather threat. Space weather, which can disrupt satellites, stifle communication networks, and paralyze the electric power grid, is getting some special scrutiny from the Obama administration, was a laugh. Folks, if you embrace climate change, you deny the existence of the sun. What's space weather, folks? And the lies continue. The lies continue. The one sitting on the throne of 1,000 swords is advancing the cause. I've tied it together for you, folks, and some of it was conjectural, but based in reality and on the history of things, as I told you, and predicted. Not that the Catholic Church would do this, but that the Catholic Church was involved in this Middle East thing. And then you heard of what 2 weeks later that the Pope canonizes some evangelist. His hands are bloodied, but here we have it. The money-lending mafia, after the true Christians, wanting to destabilize the condition. The general working behind the scenes, that the guy sitting on the throne of 1,000 swords is right over in Syria, making no sense at all. More lies, right? What do we have? What business does the United States have there anyway? What about these entanglements we're getting into? The story that we're not sending any combat troops, and yet they're all, as I said, they're walking like a duck, but they shoot like a duck, right? It's a duck, folks. It's still an ongoing question. But, again, if we did need to hear it on how insane the people in the seats of decision are, that it's up to us to stop somehow. And I hope it's as peaceful as what happened in Ottawa over the farm milk. I really do. I think I want us to come up with a much more intelligent response, even for as late in the game as it seems. See, folks, it's all about your consent always. As soon as you all stop consenting, it won't matter what they've done. But until then, your life will become more and more miserable to the point when you may not be able to actually enforce your actual choice. I've been asking you all these times. I said, it's coming, folks. You get to the point you may not be able to respond. And you'll think you've done enough, and it doesn't hurt you. You're out of here in a few years, so it doesn't matter. No, that ain't going to cut it, actually. The White House admits the U.S. troops in Syria will go on combat raids. Obama as liar-in-chief, again. Right? On and on and on. During a speech at the Defense of One summit, in which he repeatedly insisted the U.S. troops heading to Syria won't be on combat missions, the Deputy National Security Advisor Ben Rhodes conceded that the troops will be going out on raids against ISIS forces, during which they'll engage in combat. And there's a whole lot of theories behind this. This is apparently another offensive against the Russian action. And also telegraphing, if they go to the Peshmerga army. Turkey won't bomb them because you'll be bombing the United States soldiers. But this is the United States' way of trying to enforce itself in the area after it's been losing terribly on many, many fronts the political and geopolitical advantage, whatever it had, on being a thug in the world. We're inserting combat troops, and I don't hear, crickets. Where's Congress? This is advancing that global economic order, folks, is all I can tell you. It looks like it's different, but it's not. It's all the same stuff. And this has been planned. It's now in the news, a Syrian invasion plan since 2012. We knew that, but now we're seeing this denial, this liar in chief who says there's no combat. It's been planned to be combat. No boots on the ground, a lie from the start. So what are we saying? Well, we're saying we're dealing with a bunch of liars. These are criminals. We have to get that inside, not just as, oh yeah, they're criminals. No, you are dealing, you got to make it private to you. This is like someone walking up to you with a gun, sticking it to your head and said, give me your wallet and your car, and your daughter. And I'm coming back next week with friends in low places. This is who we're dealing with that's become the government. I don't know how we got here. I am that innocent. I'm that oblivious. On the other hand, I know how we got here. And we really, I don't know what to say more than to maybe ask, what do we really choose to exist? Do we really want to see these guys continue the lies that go and murder millions of people, that enslave millions of millions? I'm talking to you now, not those people they're murdering. Those people are dead. I'm talking about the ones they enslave while they tell you their benefit for you for killing those people is your enslavement as well, globally. That after we see these lies all this time, when are we going to rise up, folks, and say enough is enough? Copenhagen, yeah, it's going to happen now in the United States. We're not going to let you do it anymore. Nope. Do I go to what? Not on my watch? And some of you feel good about that phrase. Not on my watch is more than a statement. Like we use I take responsibility. What the heck's that mean? Yeah, all these liars take responsibility. Well, they're liars, so they're not taking anything. But what is that? That alone is a lie. Crickets. I hear crickets. But we're an embarrassment as a nation. And I hear crickets on that as well. And all the people that want to swear allegiance to the United States and uphold it and haven't made a peep domestically, the domestic invasion, I don't know. I really don't know. I know all of y'all are good people. So it's not that. Kind of, I was talking to one of the guys, I won't talk too much, but like I was talking to the guy who came in to try and tell us what all we were doing wrong and what we needed to do. I said, there's things you just don't know. And they're going to condition what you're telling us. So this is what we don't know really kind of hurts us. And what we don't act upon is really, literally going to kill us here at some point. I know it's killing people in other lands. Battlefield America is no joke. The attack starts to happen. We get internal, people die left and right, it seems, anymore. And in certain subject matter areas of study, and certainly seeming focused on things counter to the agenda that the government and its institutions want for us. That in this Syria lie that goes on, and all the players that are going on, that I didn't talk too much about this, but I'll mention a couple mentions about it. The downing of that passenger plane is the worst disaster, commercial aircraft disaster for Russia. Interestingly, they had another aircraft go down. Russia had another aircraft go down as a cargo jet in South Sudan. And from the first one came out the surmise of CIA Saudis to give select Syrian militants weapons capable of downing commercial airliners. Wednesday brought a veritable smorgasbord of new information about the Russian passenger jet that fell out of the sky on the Sinai Peninsula last weekend. Well, Sinai Peninsula is really controlled by whom, folks? But the Israelis, right? So when I heard the United States officials say that Russia's going to pay a price, and within 2 days this airplane goes down, I'm thinking Israel when it was in the Sinai. That's just how I don't prove it. That's what my thought was. You can validate the veracity of that intuition. That when I saw this story, it's not is doing this. This is again, they're using the fiction, the straw man, in order to displace who's actually done it. And there's been questions on now they try to say that it was more of a missile than in fact it did look like more of a bomb. The information's coming out that there was a bomb planted on that plane, folks. And so who's the closest proximity to be able to do that but Israel? They're militarily control that place. Egypt's got their people all over the place as well. That this was literally what the United States has said. Britain came out and said it's a bomb, and then Russia said, no, you can't do that until we get the information. Then they're finding out it sounds like there was a bomb on the board. How did Britain know? How did the United States know? If ISIS is going to be given the weapons to take down a commercial airliner, it must mean that maybe they didn't have them, and so the logic seems to be that a bomb was planted. Who done it? Well, ISIS is just a fabrication, so it has to be some of the major players. Israel was first on the block. So then we got the black boxes analyzed and no sign of system failure and all this other. So they're going through the analysis. They're trying to figure out what was this. I was taking a back seat. You certainly got the intuition that this was a hit against Russia by NATO or its allies, so-called. And it doesn't really matter if it's is being the liars are covering for this through is. So the liar-in-chief's associate that comes out and says that Russia's going to pay, 2 days later they pay, and then they pay the next day, where there's no signs of structural failure in this airplane, which I was wondering, why would it go down? And initially we heard about, it was bad weather in mountains, like they would always say, and then we found out, well, no, it wasn't bad weather in mountains. Okay, so that was the story they already knew to put out. So we're looking at an attack on a Russian commercial airliner. Done by whom? Well, the United States knew it was going to happen. Britain knew what it was. Israel's the only one not being talked about, yet they have access. And then we have the other cargo plane go down the next day in South Sudan. Cargo plane crashes along the Nile in South Sudan, killing 36. 224 the first day, the next day is 36. Russian aircraft or Russian-controlled aircraft or something like this. I understand the commercial jet may have been a little different, but interesting to Russia nonetheless. Putin then says no more flights now. South Sudan rivals boosting weapon stockpiles, experts say, was another story that came out right after that. So I wanted to know, okay, with my intuition saying Israel done it, what is South Sudan? What do I know about South Sudan? Nothing. Let's go take a quick trip. Israel and South Sudan relations is actually a Wikipedia entry, and they talk all about the history of the relationship between Israel and South Sudan. In fact, Israel has offered economic help to South Sudan. Israel Aid helped South Sudan set up its Ministry of Social Development. Israel and South Sudan engaged in their first official agreement in July 2012 when Israel Military Industries signed a pact to cooperate on water infrastructure and technology development. Folks, I think Israel's got its fingerprint all over this Russian cargo jet. Israel has not been mentioned. And yet I intuitively thought we have a problem with this, and I think I've found enough for myself to believe that we're dealing with the same players. Remember, Israel was supposedly dealing with helping the moderate rebels as well. Well, that's the United States trying to take Assad out. And so Russia, some people from Russia just paid with their lives. The lie that's being perpetrated by the United States, Britain, and Israel in its silence. The fraud of omission. The crime of omission by action. That if we don't keep track of what's really going on, and I do this because I want to know who the actual culprits are. We have no authority of anyone being in Syria but the Russians at this point. and there's Iran and stuff as well. I'm just talking about the main actors here on the front of it. That the United States, Israel, and Britain ought not be there. These are the terrorists. If you look at the definition of United States terrorism that Congress just changed, it's a system, it's a influence on the population that attempts to overthrow or change their political structure, is what the United States is outwardly defining what they're doing. That the United States is a terrorist. That the bomb planted apparently by an Israel-controlled military area would have seemingly, coincidentally, if I can't prove it, coincidentally, executed upon the promise. What we're looking at, and I think everyone's picking this up, not because I'm saying it right now, but I think you're getting the intuitive sense is already happening. Russia's under attack, but they're attacking people. They have it's like Israel attacking the Palestinians in a fishbowl called Gaza, their open air prison, which I've likened to America without the walls. We just don't see it that way. Russia is paying the price. Its people are now paying the price for it coming to help its political ally at the request of Syria. And my sense is it's not okay with me. I don't know that it should be okay with you. And we need another group of people to start addressing this fact, that we're seeing the world war, folks. I'm not talking about the world war. I'm saying this is reality. This is what's really going on. This is no joke. The war is on. Russia's not playing proxy. Russia's been requested to be frontline without any color, without any cover, whether it be moderate rebels or is or whatever. And the actors on the stage of the nations are covering for a couple of other entities as well. Notwithstanding, go back to the point. The United States is now no different and equal to what Israel's plan was, that they will kill people, which is just what we've been seeing when the United States threatened missile attacks to take out Assad and just kill people. What the United States has been allowing to be done, that the people in the United States of which shouldn't be crickets on. The entertainment, what are they called? The debates, the party debates? Are you kidding me, folks? Well, why is that more important than what we're doing to kill people under lies in other places? Advancing what I can see is the global order they tell us is coming. Remember, A2030 shows migration as a tool for the advancement of that system. And don't undermine. Don't say Putin's not maybe involved in one sense to support that new agenda either. That's the other problem. All these players are not pure. Okay, so let's not lose that part. But there's a war going on. There's people dying now. It's almost, if you find something going against Russia, something happening against Russia, I would almost guarantee it is an attack on Russia through that. That the police investigate after Putin ally Mikhail Lezin found dead in Washington hotel ought to let you know how the expansive area that the war now is. Lezin was a gentleman. He's a millionaire in Russia. He's I guess, pretty trusted guy to Vladimir Putin. He was asked a while back to get out of, I think it's Gazprom. He didn't want to be running that, and so I think their board said go ahead. But he was found in a room in a plush DuPont Circle hotel on Thursday morning. The Russian embassy in Washington said, confirming reports the Russian news agency that Lezin, I don't remember my Russian there, but 57 had died. State-owned RII Novosti reported that Lezin died of a heart attack, citing a spokesman for his family. And when they said heart attack, I'm thinking CIA, right? So there's a war going on, folks. It's up to us to help stop that. Thank you for tuning in today. I'll talk with you later. Donate where you can. I appreciate that you listened in, and send the podcast around. And Beyond Media, behind the woodshed.
Well, that's another lesson.
I hope with today's information you can take it to those that misbehave. From behind the woodshed, leaving his mark on the beast, this is Hal Anthony. Till next time, journey with purpose.
So that's what opening up a can of whoop-ass feels like.
Son, you just opened a whole case of whoop-ass.